Hello, incredible chemistry students. I hope that you are having a lovely Thursday and Friday. Make sure that you grab a copy of the Dimensional Analysis Guided Notes from up front, and you can also grab your copy of Dimensional Analysis Homework 1 if you like. Once you have those, we're going to kick it off. Hopefully the gizmo that you've been working on the last 2 days made a lot of sense to you in terms of how we can convert one unit to another unit. This process is called dimensional analysis. So the purpose of doing this is to provide you with an alternative way to convert between two units. Okay, that's your goal. Anytime you have a problem, values is not in the correct units, you're going to have to use this process of dimensional analysis to get the units that you desire. So this also helps us to analyze and solve problems anytime we have units of measurement. Now you won't always need to use dimensional analysis, but you're always looking for, what are my units? Are they what I need? Okay, so here's our 2 goals today. And we're going to break down how to do a problem and the things that go into that. So the place the dimensional analysis actually starts is with what we call an equivalency. Okay, so your equivalency states the same measurement in 2 different units. Different units, but it's the same measurement. Okay. Now, if we think about what that means, if we look here, I drew a line segment. Okay. If we got out our ruler and we wanted to measure that line segment, now this isn't going to be perfect, but let's say that this is 1 inch. Okay. So if we pulled out our ruler, those going in inches from here to here, this was 0 and 1. Okay. So these are a 1-inch line. If you then flipped your ruler around and decided that you were going to measure the same line segment, but in centimeters, obviously, it would not be the same as 1, right? You would measure this line segment out, and you would find that it takes about 2.54 centimeters is equal to that 1 inch. So, since this line segment is the same, we could say that 1 inch is therefore equal to our 2.54 centimeters. And this is an example of an equivalency. It's the same measurement, we just gave it in different units. If you're stuck here, this is a good time to ask a neighbor for some help. Confused? If that makes sense to you though, we're going to move on to what you can do with those equivalencies. We have so many of them, right? That 100 centimeters is equal to a meter. That 1,000 meters is equal to a kilometer. How 3 feet is equal to 1 yard, right? All of these things you know how they convert to each other. There's 12 inches in a foot, right? Those are all examples of equivalencies. You then can use those equivalencies to make what we call a conversion factor. So this is where we're going to take an equivalency that has an equal sign, equivalency, equal sign, and a factor means a fraction. So we're going to turn it into a fraction where the numerator, that's your number on top, and denominator, that's your number on the bottom, are equal quantities. So same thing here. Equal quantities, same measurement, expressed in different units. we're taking this right here and we're putting it in fraction form now. So what that looks like, because they are the equal quantities, because they're equal, you can envision this like a giant 1 in math, right? You know how sometimes when you're like, ooh, I want to get rid of my fraction, you might multiply by 3 over 3 because it's the same as 1. Because these are in different units, they also work like that 1. Okay, now we can express this in two different ways. We could put 1 inch on top, which means that the 2.54 centimeters would go on the bottom. Or if it's a giant 1, you could also write it another way. Take a second to think about how you might write that and maybe give it a shot on your own. Okay, the other way we could write it is we can flip it. So we can write 2.54 centimeters on top with 1 inch on the bottom. So you now have two conversion factors that come from every equivalency. If you're stuck, if you don't understand how you got this, pause the video, ask a neighbor. Okay, so now that we have our conversion factors, we can actually do a problem. Now, as you've been doing problems in your Gizmo and so on, you have to pay close attention to your units. You have to watch for your units. Okay, when you set this up correctly, you need to think about the setup of your conversion factor. Since you have two options, right, you want to make sure that whatever unit, right, was on top is the same as the unit on the bottom of the conversion factor. So let's look at a sample problem. Our sample problem here is how many centimeters are in 3.74 inches? Your goal is that you always want to start by figuring out what information do you know and what are you trying to convert to. So our given value here, that's your number. It's 3.74 and it has the value of inches. That's your given. Our end goal is to get this in units of centimeters. We're trying to end at centimeters. Okay. Your given value always goes in the top left corner. When we set this up, we put 3.74 inches. Remember, make sure you're putting units on your numbers. Now, in the Gizmo, right, when you dragged different conversion factors in there, right, they just showed fractions and multiplication. That's the same thing. This is called the ladder. The reason that we do this is just it's a little bit easier to extend a full line and just add lines in up and down as you need to add more and more conversion factors. If you prefer drawing just the fraction line and a multiple choice, and a multiplication symbol, that's totally fine as well. Okay? Now, what we're going to do is we have to pick our conversion factor. We wrote two options below, right? One with inches on top, centimeters on bottom. One with centimeters on top, inches on bottom. So you have two options of what conversion factor you want to put in. So how we choose, remember, we have to make sure we set up our conversion factor correctly so that our units cancel out. If we have inches on top right here, inches also need to go here, right? We want them on opposite sides so that they cancel out. If inches needs to go on bottom, look at your two conversion factors and pick which one makes the most sense here. Great. You should have picked that we have 2.54 centimeters over 1 inch. So we put our 2.54 centimeters on top, 1 inch on the bottom. Now what that does, right, just like in a fraction that you might do in math, right, if you have an x on top and an x on the bottom, those would cancel out. So your inches cancel and you're left in units of centimeters. Now, might be wondering, but how do I actually calculate this? Here's your calculator tips. You multiply, right, because this is like a multiplication symbol, every number that's on top together. There might be more than 2. And then you're going to divide by your bottom numbers. There might be more than 1. So if you pull out your calculator, which you should practice this, if you need a calculator, remember they're in the drawer up front. We're going to type in 3.74 multiplied by 2.54, and we're going to divide that by 1. That should give you 9.4996. You do not have to show 4 decimal points at all time. Normally I tell you to round to like 2 decimal points. If we're going to round to 2 decimal points, we would look here. This 9 is going to round that 9 up. So we would end up with 9.50 centimeters. You can also leave it as 4 decimal points. Either way is totally fine, but make sure you get units on that last answer. Okay, hopefully this is making a little bit more sense with that gizmo and going over a problem together. What you're going to be doing, first of all, make sure that you grab this worksheet. Okay? This is what is due on Monday when I see you. On this worksheet, you are doing only one-step practice. Okay? When you're doing one-step practice, there's only one conversion factor for each thing. Okay? You're not going to have multi-step problems. We'll talk about those on Monday. You'll notice at the bottom are all the answers, which means there's an expectation that you show work. If you just write all of these answers in the equal sign, I will not give you credit for this assignment. Okay? On here, there's a little asterisk next to some of them that say metric to metric. That asterisk tells you that for metric to metric conversions, please see your chemistry reference sheet. Remember, there's extras up front, paper copies that you can take home. Those metric to metric conversions are here. You can see what's equal to what, right? We have a top value and a bottom value. All of the bolded meters, it works for any base. So let's say that you're doing grams, right? 10 squared, 100 centigrams is equal to 1 gram. You can sub in any of these units for those M's across the board. Okay? That's going to give you all of your conversion factors. Feel free to work on a neighbor with this. It is 10 questions. I believe in you. You have to attempt every single one. Got to do something, even if you're struggling and you're like, man, I didn't get the right answer. But if you're struggling, make sure that you ask someone for help. I will be somewhat available by email, so if you have really urgent questions, please feel free to do that. But you have an incredible sub with you today, so I wish you all the best and have a wonderful